applying, but not that many from Tanzania, and we'd like to raise that number. So as Education USA, what we're trying to do is give that information to the people, have the people be aware of what's going on out there, what opportunities you can grasp and take advantage of, so you too can also study in the US. So in my presentation today, we'll be covering three main things. That's admission practices in the US, pre-professional programs, and then 5 steps to studying in the US. I'm not sure what the makeup is of the people here. I was told it's going to be students, alumni, and staff. So I'll try to have something for everybody and cover both undergraduate and graduate opportunities in this short time that I have. So when we're talking about admission practices in the US, we're looking at what are US institutions looking at, right? There are a few basic things that in every application, as an admission counselor, as a department person who's looking at, department faculty is looking at applications and trying to choose who is gonna make the cohort for this year. There are a few things that we're looking at, right? And these are the things that make up the requirements of the application, right? We're looking at academic performance, right? When admission offices or admission department faculty look at your application, when they're looking at academic performance, they're really looking at your transcript. That's how they know how you performed as a student, right? They're looking at your writing skills. And this can be covered in the personal statement. The personal statement functions for many other reasons, but one of the main reasons also is to be able to see what your skill as a writer is. And the thing about education in the US is that no matter what you take, no matter what program, what degree, you will write. It doesn't matter if it's medicine, if it's art history, if it's mathematics, you will write, because academia in the US is very much contingent on your ability to produce articles, to write academic work. And so writing is a skill that a lot of times is being looked at in the application process. They're also looking at community engagement, and that's what you do outside of the classroom, and we call these extracurriculars. Extracurriculars look very different in Tanzania than they do look in the US. So not everybody here is gonna be on a basketball team or a soccer team, but there are other ways you can demonstrate your extracurricular activities, especially when it comes to volunteering. I know you guys are medicine students or medicine-related activities. What are you doing in the field that's outside of the classroom that you can add into that application to give yourself a bigger, to provide a bigger picture? We're also looking at academic ability, and that's with standardized tests. Dr. James is gonna cover the USMLEs later, and part of that is your academic ability. Those tests, those requirements, things like that. In the undergraduate level, you're looking at SAT or ACT, you're looking at, on the graduate level, looking at the GMAT, if I'm not mistaken, MCAT, things like that. All these tests are testing your academic ability. Not your performance, but what your performance can prove is seen in your academic ability. Then we're looking at English proficiency, and this is an important part. We want to make sure that as a student that you're able to communicate with the professor, and the professor is able to communicate with you, that everybody can understand each other in the classroom setting. And so English proficiency becomes a very important aspect of this process, because we want to, we want to make sure that everybody understands everybody. There's no lapse in communication. There's no, oh, this one went to this school and this. We just want to make sure everybody can understand each other. And so that's what English proficiency is looked at. And then we look at character. And character is seen mostly in your letter of recommendation. Your letter of recommendation can cover, again, a lot of things. It's kind of like the personal statement. It can tell a lot about who you are as a person, and that's where the character part comes in. But also it can tell a lot about your integrity, because your letter of recommendation tends to certify what you've written in your application. You're volunteering in something, you're doing something outside of classroom, or you're participating in all these things in the classroom space. The person writing your letter of recommendation should be somebody close enough to you to know about these things you're doing outside of the classroom. And so never look for a letter of recommendation from a professor or a teacher who only knows your name on a test paper. This has to be somebody that you've worked closely with, somebody that you're in good standing with, somebody that you respect and that respects you. Never put somebody who is in power to, could possibly ruin your career as the person, oh no, not now. Sorry. Somebody who could put your career on hold, basically, or ruin it, essentially, just because they don't like you, and then you give that person power to write your recommendation letter, right? So we want to make sure that when you're thinking about the application process, and you're thinking, what is the university looking for from me? What do I need to provide? And what are the things that, when I'm providing, what are the things that I need to make sure I'm showing in the application process? These are the main things that we're looking at. All right, then we're going to jump into pre-professional programs. And this information is not necessarily for you. This information is maybe you have a sister, a brother who is interested in going into medicine, and you don't know how they can start that in the US, right? You guys have had the chance to start that here, but perhaps you want to start from the bachelor level in the US. And that's when we talk about pre-professional programs, right? Pre-professional programs or specialized, they are a precursor to the specialized degree, right? A specialized degree could be medicine, law, dentistry, pharmacy, architecture. Almost everything in the health sciences is considered a professional degree, right? And so when you're going in and saying, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a pharmacist, many times in the US, that's not possible as a first degree. A professional degree is what we call a master's degree or a PhD. These are specialized, they're a bit more advanced. And so a bachelor's degree does not cut it. And so in order to pursue a professional degree in the US, I'm sure some of you might know by now, you would need to have had a bachelor's degree already. And when you have a degree in the US, you have the option to pursue it through a pre-professional program. And so you'd see students who are in bachelor's programs and say, I'm a pre-med student, I'm a pre-law student. What that basically means is they're pursuing a professional degree after their bachelor's, and they're currently in a program that allows them to meet certain requirements that are necessary for them to start med school. So these programs are specialized undergraduate courses of study that prepare students for graduate school or particular profession. Up there are some examples. Some schools have pre-business for MBA programs. There's pre-nursing, pre-dentistry, pre-veterinary programs, pre-architecture, pre-law. All of these programs that I'm mentioning here, with the exception of business, I would say, you'd have to pursue a bachelor's degree first before you get a degree for any of these programs. So if you're looking for schools and you'd like to pursue a professional degree in the future, when you're looking for schools, make sure that the school already has a pre-professional path available for you. The way to do this, once you pursue a pre-professional path, you can maximize your undergraduate experience by choosing the right program, taking relevant courses, and utilizing resources at your institution, gaining experience, growing your network, finding mentors, which is very important because in the pre-professional program without a mentor, it can go anyway, anyhow. And when you have a mentor, they can kind of direct you and guide you into what is necessary to take and what is just fluff pieces and fluff courses to take, things like that. So you get to know the difference because it's basically your first time doing it, Then also developing strong communication and leadership skills. When you're going into med school, some of the things that we're looking at is a person who can be a leader, a person who can communicate well. And the best way to do it is to practice that and develop those skills in your bachelor's degree experience. And so a pre-professional program can be very helpful to you in that manner. Then we're going to talk about the 5 steps to US study. Step 1 is research. And in step 1 with research, we like to identify priorities. And what does that look like? That's, first of all, asking yourself if US study is for you. What type of degree do you want to get? What type of university are you looking for? Where in the US do you want to live? Do I have competitive qualifications? One of the biggest things I always advise students when they come to me and they're looking for advice into studying in the US is don't look for a scholarship first, look for a school first. Look for a university that meets your needs, that has exactly what you're looking for, that has most of the priorities that you have online, and then look for a scholarship afterwards. Because what happens is you can look for a scholarship, but then you don't have anywhere to apply that scholarship to because you're not being admitted to a university. So instead of looking for a scholarship first, In the US, it's much more beneficial for you to look for a university, then look for a scholarship that can align with what you have at the university. When it comes to doing your research, there are a few resources available. I have some for undergraduates and for graduates. However, if you're looking for a university, you don't know where to start, you don't know what kind of program you're looking for, there are search engines. We have Big Future College Search and Niche. These are really good resources to go into. Just type the name of what I just put there and add.com at the end. It's really simple. These search engines essentially help you narrow down choices. There's over 4,000 universities in the US. There's over 1,000 probably in medicine. And so what you're trying to look for is to find a program that works for you. So what you can do is you can go on there, you can look at, You can look at, say, location. You can filter your university options by program. You can filter them by, qualifications or accreditation. All of these things are possible when you go through the search engines. So play around with these if you have a chance and see what you can find when you're looking for a university that could work for you. All right. Step 2 on our 5 steps is funding your education. This is the part that a lot of people are most interested in. Everybody wants to know, how can I get a scholarship? How can I get this thing funded? So I'm disappointed to say that Education USA does not have funding to fund education. But what we do is we provide resources, we provide information. If anything comes our way, if a university reaches out to us and says, hey, we have students, we can do that. But when you're looking at financing, you need to identify, you need to know what is it exactly you're asking for a scholarship for. That is why it's so important to identify your cost. There's tuition and fees, and there's living costs, right? These are very separate things when you're studying in the US. You could get a 100% fully funded scholarship, like the way people like to say it here, and that could only cover tuition and fees, but then living expenses. So when you're thinking about funding your education, how are you preparing for these extra costs that might come up? We call them living costs. It can mean paying for your own room and food, transportation, books and supplies, personal expenses. Sometimes scholarships don't cover those things, and it's important for you to realize when you're looking for a scholarship, what does it cover? When you're doing that research, what is it that's within your means and what isn't, so that when you're looking for extra funding, you know exactly how much it is you're looking for to be covered in your experience. One thing I like to tell people when it comes to this step is that a scholarship is not your right. Scholarship sio haki yako. I just want to repeat that one more time for everybody, because what happens is everybody thinks if I apply for a scholarship, I'll get it. But scholarship is when someone receives a scholarship, it's the result of a lot, and you need to be willing to put in that work and put in that effort. You're asking for a school to give you $250,000 over 4 years. What are you bringing to the table? Remember that first slide I spoke about what a university is looking for in an applicant? Those 5 things, you need to be able to demonstrate that very, very benchmarks on how you can meet those. But it's on you to do the research and find out what it is. If, for example, at Harvard, in order to be a student, you need to get a 1,400 in your SATs to be even considered, then that's your benchmark. In other schools, it could be 1,300, right? Whatever grade that you need to do to make in order to be qualified for that opportunity, that's what you should aim for. But then to just go about it blindly and say, I hope I get a scholarship, that's not how scholarships work. People work really hard for scholarships, and it does take a lot more strategic thinking to kind of get that done, and not just, I will it, so it must be so, kind of energy. That being said, if you need assistance in this process, we're really here for you. It can be tough to navigate sometimes, and SAY is here to support you in that step. Financial aid. So there's different types of financial aid. There's merit-based financial aid. That really is in its name. It really is money that's given to you based off of something good that you've done. It could be grades, it could be athletics, it could be that you did a research paper or did some kind of volunteer work that was very impressive, and the school says, because of this, we're rewarding you this money. Merit-based financial aid, you don't have to pay for it. Need-based financial aid, these are schools that use the demonstrated need and then see how they can meet it. Some schools meet all of your needs, some schools meet some of your need, It really does depend on what kind of policy the school has. But trust me, the school will always say what kind of policy they have on their tuition and fees page. So make sure you look into that. Need-based looks at your family income or your personal income. May also consider merit, but also at the end of the day, this is money that you don't have to return. The difference between merit-based and need-based, many times need-based doesn't cover full tuition. It can cover some of it. It might end up giving you room to pay for some of it. Merit-based scholarships tend to be more all-encompassing, tend to, not all the time, but typically merit-based scholarships will cover more money than need-based scholarships. Then we have on-campus employment. Kunambo, if you go to the US, you'll just work and you'll make your living expenses. Things like books, things like food, transport can be covered quite easily with on-campus employment. So, you know, if you want to learn more about that, please let me know. I don't have anything else I can add to that. And then there's also alternative funding options. The US government scholarships, we have the Fulbright options. And so I'm going to go over those really quickly. And Mariam has, you know, she has this. And so ask her, she'll email you a PDF. I'm sure it's possible, yeah? Yeah. All right, so we have the Fulbright Foreign Student Program. For those of you who are looking to do research programs, master's programs, things like that, that can go up to 2 years. We are really happy to let you guys know you can apply to that. For MD programs, things that take longer than 5 years, longer than 2 years, and so on, those are not covered within the foreign student program. But the Fulbright Foreign have finished their bachelor's degrees, they have a bit of work experience, you're eligible to apply for this. All this information is on our website. Then we have the Fulbright African Senior Research Scholar Program, or ASRSP. This is for particular students who have PhDs with 3 years teaching experience at a university level, and they're working, like they're currently doing research. Then this Fulbright opportunity allows you to go to the US and conduct research there for a year. If this is something that works for you, if you feel like you, please apply. We don't get enough people applying for this Fulbright opportunity. So when it opens again next year, please look into it and apply. Then we have the Hubert Humphrey Fellowship Program. This is for staff members who have at least 5 years of experience. At this point, you're considering you a mid-level professional. If there's an issue, a problem that you'd like to tackle, you'd like to get some training in order to bring back a solution back to Tanzania, this is a program that gives you 5 months in the US. You get your training, then you come back and implement it. This is a non-degree program. And then the Mandela Washington Fellowship, many of you guys know it as YALI as well. This is for people who are between the ages of 25 and 35. This is a 6-week opportunity to attend a leadership institute in the US. The application for that just opened. This is the only application that's still open right now. Please look into it. It's on our social media pages. Pretty much everywhere. I think it's on LinkedIn, it's on Instagram, it's on Facebook. Check it out, send an application. We'd love to have more applicants on there. If you're in medicine and you'd like to get, it's a 6-week training course, and you'd like to get some, this is such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful extra feather in your cap. If you're thinking of applying right after, it can work wonderfully for you. Then there's also other academic institutions and private sponsors. People like MasterCard are also good resources for scholarships. We also have a scholarship search engine, and unfortunately I didn't put that information on. But again, you'll have my email, and you can always reach out to me and I can send that to you. There's about 2 of them, I think. Yeah. All right, basically, this step is about making a plan, making a budget, reducing your costs. There's always ways to shave off certain expenses. Sometimes you want to live in the US, and the reality is students in the US don't live lavishly. They really are humble lives. Just kama hapa, wanafunzi, they're just living casual lives. Same there. There's nothing crazy going on. So sometimes people are budgeting for getting these things, and it's like, maybe that's just not necessary. So if there's any ways for you to reduce your costs, please, this is a step where you can kind of make a plan and see where money can be expensed or reduced. And then also, this is a step to apply for scholarships as well. Step 3 is about completing your application, and these are all things that I mentioned in the earlier slide about understanding your requirements, gathering your credentials. Tanzania, sometimes you have a hard time getting documents from here to other universities. Don't wait until the last week before the deadline to get this stuff done. Just do it as early as you can. Take your standardized tests. Make sure you know when the deadline is, you know when the test date is, you know how to get there. For people in medicine, if I'm not mistaken, the South Africa for all of Africa, and the USMLEs are in Nairobi. So don't say, oh, the test is tomorrow. I didn't know the test is in Nairobi. No. Plan accordingly so that you're able to do the test on time, get your results on time before the deadlines. Request your recommendation letters well ahead of time. Teachers are extremely busy. Professors are very busy people. Don't say, I have 1 week, I'm going to give them enough time. Ask for a recommendation letter at least even 2 months ahead, so that they have it in their mind, so they can write the recommendation letter without a gun to their head, like waiting for responses from you, right? And then write your personal statement. Something I always tell people, your personal statement, the first draft is not the one to submit. Sit down, write it, finish it, take 3 days, come back, do it again. Make your personal statement so bulletproof that like when someone reads it, they want to learn more about you. Because all of these things come together to tell a story of who you are as a candidate. They're not looking at just one thing. They're not looking just about your grades. They're not looking just at application cycle and do well. There's also the issue of English proficiency tests. There are 3 main tests that are acceptable in the world today. TOEFL and IELTS are mostly well known. The Duolingo English test is new. I'm not sure if on the medicine landscape DET is acceptable yet, or if it's being used. But if you find it, at least you know about it. Then you go on your application. This is a different test. You sign up for it on your computer. It functions like an IBT version of the TOEFL or the IELTS, but you do it at home. So it's a very interesting test, and that's why it's gaining popularity. Academic ability, undergraduate level is Scholastic Assessment Test, the American College Test, the Graduate Record Examination Test. I'm assuming if you end up going to take an MPH, you'll have to do the GRE. But also, there's the MCAT, right? Step 4 is applying for your visa. So at this point, I'm not going to speak too much on it, but I will speak on the technical side of things. If you're going in as a student, you will receive a CVS document. This is called an I-20. This is a document that lets you start your visa application. You work on the visa application. You pay the CVS fee. After you finish your visa application, pay the CVS fee. Take that confirmation page with you. You pay the visa application fee as well. And then you schedule an appointment at the U.S. Embassy. When you do that, you schedule your interview. You'll go in. Once you've been interviewed, you also have to pay a reciprocation fee right after. Details on these fees, shoot me an email. I'll get back to you on that. But I think it's $350 for CVIS, $160 for visa, and $265 for the reciprocation fee. So this is money that you need to have if this is going to come through at some point. That's just how the process works. And this is only for the student visa. This is not applicable for different visas that you might end up applying to. And then step 5 is to prepare for departure. If you ever need to work on, get a pre-departure orientation, the U.S. Embassy offers free pre-departure orientations for students. It gives you a brief overview of where you're going, how to prepare, resources that you can use while you're in university, people that we know in the area that could be of help to you. All of that, we do that in pre-departure orientation. Give you a little bit of highlight. Oh, don't take a picture of me, I'm sweating. Go to university and so. All right, I am now open for questions for about 5 minutes or so. And this is my information. My email is at states.Gov. This phone number is a landline phone number, but feel free to call me Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30 on Monday to Thursday. Friday, we close early, so 11, we're out. And then you can also check out the Education USA website. But there's no way for them to prove that. So usually, typically, Some schools will be like, okay, whatever, you can come in and we'll give you a waiver. Some schools might require you to, prove it, or some schools will be like, there's no way for us to prove it, we say no. So waivers.
It's like you wanted to explain more, but I feel like because you kind of rushed into it, you tried to separate the levels of the academic ability test, but I'll just like to speak more about it. Ideally, I think more on the GRE, because I think with the level the little that I know, I think mostly they will require GRE. Is it, or is it also?
So the GRE is more of a general test. We see that being required at the graduate level for typical arts, humanities, vibes programs. But that doesn't mean that it's limited to just that. There are more specified tests on the medical scene, like the MCAT, which is more expensive and harder to do since it's in South Africa and everything, and very few test dates. It can get complicated. So if you can do the GRE or the GMAT, any of these general standardized tests that are used for admission, if that is being required, I'd say go ahead and do that. We have a test center for the GRE here. We have a test center for GMAT in Tanzania. I have information on the test fees, the test locations, all of that. But just send me an email. I don't have it on me. It's sad. But yeah, we have that information. Send me an email, and I can give that information over to you. But there are general standardized tests for just general master's degree programs. Yeah.
Thank you. All right, so I can also help answer that question. You specifically asked on GREs, right? Okay, so I can share my experience. I did GREs. And so this was back in 2012, so that's when I did the exam. And I took the exam at the University of Dar es Salaam at that time. So you had to pay and then do the exam. So it's, for me, the reason I did it is because it was one of the requirements for grad school. I was applying for an MPH program at Boston University, and there are other universities that also needed it. So at that time when I was applying for an MPH, there was a software, it's called SOFAS, where it has all the public health schools in that software, and then you just choose different schools that you want to apply. So some would have an application fee, some would be free. So some of the universities that I selected that I wanted to apply for an MPH course needed a GRE. So it's basically a math and English exam. Right, so it's not easy. So it took me several months to prepare. So basically your O-level math, I don't remember, lakini you have to know math. Mimi nilifeli, so niwe tu mkweli. So the results ambazo mimi nimepata, it could not get me into school because there's a certain, what is it called?
Score range.
Yeah, percentile, yes.
Yeah.
For you to get into BU or good schools in the US, you need to get to that point in order kufanya pass mtihani na kuweza kuingia. So I know several people who attempted here at MUHAS. You may fail the first attempt, second attempt. So basically, you your O-level math vizuri, zile triangles, Pythagoras, all those. And English was not easy as well. So there was written exam. There was one. In short, ilikuwa ni mtihani mgumu. Okay, and you need to be very well prepared. And hapa, luckily, MUHAS library kulikuwa kuna Kaplan materials. So I used resources from MUHAS. So nilienda library kulikuwa kuna materials za kusaidia kusoma GRE. I don't know kama sasa hivi zipo, but when I was training, the materials were there. Zipo pia at that time, kupata vitu online was not easy. So you had to go to the library kupata hizo materials. So it is possible. Unaweza ukafaulu. Mimi hapa ndio nilikuwa na shida. Mimi binafsi, shida yangu binafsi. So what I did is I looked for university that didn't require GRE. So I was trained in the US, but the second attempt ambayo nimefanya niliapply chuo that didn't need it, and I got admitted. Na sikusubmit yale matokeo yangu kwa sababu ningejua hata kama hahitaji ningesubmit ningeweza kukosa kwa sababu ningeonekana sijui hesabu. So yes. So if you are applying for GRE, make sure you know how you've prepared for GREs. Don't go blindly saying that you're going to pass.
Just to add on to that, when it comes to resources, we have resources over at the American Corner, if anyone is familiar with it. The American Corner is over at the National Museum. We have GRE prep books, SAT prep books, ACT prep books, GMAT prep books. TOEFL prep books. We just got the latest TOEFL books there. We're very excited for that. So for those of you who are interested in preparing for these tests and need free resources, you can go there. It's kind of like a library, but like you can't check out, but like you can go there, study, take advantage of those resources and prepare. Also, something else that Mariam said, SOFAS is still around. So if you're interested in applying to universities in the US in the medical field, you can still look into SOFAS as well. And there's another one for, that was the one for public health, yes?
Yes, SOPHAS. So it's SOPHAS. So in here for the portal, you get several universities that you can apply to. And through those universities, if you apply, ndio utajua kama kuna financial aid and everything. So this is just application to the university. It's not a scholarship. So once you apply in the university, you'd know other opportunities within the university to get funding for that. Any other questions?
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for having me. Please send me an email. I promise I'm not very fast when I'm like not in a hurry. But send me an email. I'd love to speak to you guys about options. Stick around and listen to Dr. I keep forgetting it. Dr. Minja, because he's fantastic and he's doing such great work here, and there's a lot for you guys to pick up and learn from him. That being said, email me. Have fun. Bye.
Change the presentation. Yeah, change the presentation. Yeah. Yani, just minimize it. I think mine is behind it.
Like this one first. Here.
Where's mine?
So you get a yours already?
Nadhani ilikuwepo. Oh, okay. I see. Man, can you just press slideshow? Okay. All right. All right. All right. Test 1, 2. Okay. Thanks very much for the opportunity to present today. My name is Dr. Frank Minja, not James Ignas Kola. It's my pleasure to present here today, and this is the work that we're doing together with my good friend and colleague, James Ignas Kola, which is really providing information around the United States medical licensing examinations, ili to kind of democratize this information. Mara nyingi when I get these requests, they come from family, friends, or people who know me personally, or they know Dr. Ignas personally, and we really feel that all Tanzanian medical students should have this information. So everything I say here is on YouTube. It's 3 versions. There's USMLE 101, there's 201, and 301, depending on which stage of the process that you're in. I'm going to do a very abbreviated version of that presentation, maybe 30 minutes or so, and I'm hoping the balance of the hour will be questions and answers. So if you have questions, anything USMLE, now is your time to ask your question, okay? So yeah, so for the 30 minutes, I'm gonna give you a brief review, but again, none that I say here is a secret. This is public information. So I'm not making anything up. All of this is vetted, but I'm hoping through my presentation, I can share a few insights just to kind of like mix things up and make sure that you guys are connecting with this information. So by just show of hands, how many MD1s, just by show of hands? MD1s? MD2s? MD3s? MD4s? MD5s? Staff? All right, so mixed audience. All right, Aina Shida. I can't see anybody online, like we'll just deal with the audience right here. So I also like to start with the end of the conclusion. So if I kind of lose you, this is what this whole talk is about. Why do USMLE? Like, why prepare for the USMLE? You may say, I'm not even planning to go to the United States. Why bother? Okay? And the other thing, the people say, oh, why are we promoting, Tanzania needs a lot of physicians. Why is Frank Minja promoting people to go study and work in the United States? I'm contributing to the brain drain. Hapana. I'm in the business of creating better doctors anywhere. I don't care whether you're from Tanzania, Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda, Nigeria, Ghana, China, I don't care. We want better doctors, okay? And one of the best ways of creating better doctors is to standardize the medical education. So by preparing for the USMLE examination, automatically you're gonna have to reach a certain standard. And that standard is gonna stay with you no matter where you practice, whether in Mwanza, whether in Dar es Salaam, whether in Atlanta, whether in Boston, you're going to practice at a certain standard. Pili, most of the USMLE focuses on integrating information, not just saying fact A, fact B, fact C. How is fact A linked to fact B, linked to fact C? So it's integrating information, and that's something about Bado in our education, we're still lagging behind. So we have a lot of stuff is memorization. That is how our education system is built. So slowly we have to build to a point where we're doing a lot more integration of information. So take this piece of information, that piece of information, then come to a conclusion. Don't ask me, what's the answer, A, B, or C? No, how is A related to B, related to C? So USMLE is built that way, and we'll say that. So again, the point here is just by the virtue of you trying to pass through the USMLE preparation, you'll become a better medical student. And if you become a better medical student, you're gonna become a better medical doctor. So that's the message here. Everything else we're gonna talk about is more the mechanics, should you choose to go forward. There are 3 steps that we're gonna talk about: USMLE number, ECFMG certificate, and then lastly is gonna be the NRMP match. So again, these are a lot of acronyms. You can Google all of them, but roughly speaking, these are the steps in which we're going to kind of take you through in the next 20 or so minutes. So what is graduate medical education? That is often referred to as residency. Here in East Africa is relatively basically equivalent to Masters in Medicine programs. So that's sort of like where we're headed towards. So this is not MD. This is not your medical doctor degree. This is after you've done your medical doctor degree, after you've done your internship, now you want to do a specialty, whether it's internal medicine, whether it's psychiatry, whether it's cardiology, neurology, surgery, and so forth. That is what we are talking about. And most of this in the United States is done within a program. So you're applying to join a residency program. And the residency program is housed either in a community hospital, either in a clinic, or in a university hospital. I happen to work in a university hospital linked to the Emory School of Medicine, and that's most of our programs come through that. So that program is responsible and is actually managed by the ACGME. So we can't just do whatever we want. It's actually regulated. There's a certain number within radiology. You have to read certain number of studies. You have to have certain number of MRI scanners, CT scanners, and so forth to make sure when you graduate, you meet certain sort of competencies and so forth. Now, the MED that we know is almost always done in universities, except there's the other pathway in East Africa, which is COSEXA. And that's the other pathway that you can do. So this is something that's favored in other countries surrounding us. It's East and Southern Africa. I just looked it up this morning. They're approaching their 25th anniversary. So they've been doing this for 25 years. But this happens where people want to do surgery, but they don't match up Mwimbili, KSMC, whatever. They get basically attached at different hospitals elsewhere, and they kind of rotate around. It's an apprenticeship and so forth. West Africa, does a lot of this as well. They have a West African College of Surgeons, and that's how they do their training, as opposed to doing more like MED and so forth. So there's some politics around it, but I think it's worthwhile at least exploring if that's something of an option that you would want to pursue. Now, so back to the US. In order for you to gain access to that residency program, you must pass these exams. And that's what the USMLE is about, right? Even if you're a full professor here at Mohas and you say, I want to go and practice internal medicine in the United States, you're welcome to come, but you must pass these United States medical licensing exams. Furthermore, the medical school that you went to has to be part of this directory. It's called the WHO directory, but it's in this World Directory of Medical Schools. And so if you go onto that particular website and you put in Tanzania, United Republic, it's going to basically spit out that we now have 11 medical schools that qualify. So the first step is, are you going to the medical school that's recognized, right? So basically those medical schools have to be recognized and registered through this system and so forth. And the reason I say that is when we did this presentation maybe a year or so ago, there were only like 8 Tanzanian medical schools. So since then, people have gone through the process of vetting their schools to have them basically be part of this particular mechanism. So I'm saying this because people may be watching this online and they may be going to a medical school that is not part of these 11 medical schools, so they'll have to go through a certain process to have those schools be registered so they can apply. So we're going to take a small detour. So also, applying through the US medical system requires us to follow instructions very, very carefully. And one of the things that really trips up us Tanzanians, because we like to freestyle, is we take things kiushkaji, all right? We kind of like, and the best way is like names. So John Casey with a Y, John Casey with an I, John Casey with one S. Those are 3 different people. Maybe Nyumbani, they even have, like Nyumbani. It doesn't apply here, right? Here, everything has to match, and we have to follow instructions to be very specific. You go to the Muhammad, it's the same thing. You have a double M, sometimes single M, sometimes you end with the I, sometimes it's all A's, Muhammad, right? Those are 4 different people. So again, before you start the process, it's very important that you're going to use the name that's going to appear on your passport. Because when you try to do the examination, you have to have a passport to enter the examination center. This is a very important point because it can set you back many months as you're trying to file affidavits, you're trying to get a lawyer to certify that these different names are all referring to the same people. So these are sort of small technicalities. Dr. Ignas goes through this in excruciating detail to remind people that we have to be very specific once you're sort of dealing with the United States system. So the registration starts at ECFMG, so this is the sort of certifying organization. If you are training outside the United States, you're going to be considered international medical graduates. Remember, you're competing against everybody who's coming from outside the United States, including the territories like Puerto Rico, right? Canada, right? So you guys are competing against Canada, Mexico, Puerto Rico, China, Russia, Iran, India, and all of that. So these examinations are a way to kind of unify all of you are coming in at the same level, right? So they don't care which medical school you're coming from. Did you pass the exam? And therefore, do you have the aptitude to kind of do it? Here, we're saying once you basically get that certification, you're allowed to take all the exams, but there is sort of like a rhythm in which you want to kind of do it, and not just do it because MD1s essentially can start the process, but we don't recommend you take the Step 1 examination at MD1 because of reasons I'm going to explain later. So again, if you go to ecfmg.org, you're going to basically encounter this, and basically you come down here and basically you can say you do not have an USMLE number. So this USMLE number is an extremely important number and is the first step in the journey. So one of the take-home messages is before we do it, you're going to need to apply, study, pass the USMLE, but first, everything starts with the USMLE number. And then after that, you're going to do your document verification. So the USMLE number is going to be your gateway. And again, as you're doing this, and part of the study should be somewhere else, we need to have people access the specific resources for USMLE. And this particular book, I cannot recommend it enough. I really believe all medical students should have this book. This to me is like basic, like 101, right? This is the stuff that you guys need to know. Nothing in this book, when you hit like MD3 or MD4, especially when you go into the clinics, nothing in this book should surprise you. You shouldn't open a page, I've never heard of that before. I mean, that should never sort of happen, right? So this is what we have the US medical students, they'll do like MD1 and MD2. They have to pass step 1 before they proceed to MD3 and MD4. Now you are different, right? Because you're applying to come in after graduation. So you can take your USMLE step 1 when you're MD5. You can take it when you're an intern. You can take it 2 years after graduation, right? So you have an advantage, right? The US medical students, they have to do this. If you don't do step 1, you can't move to like third year, right? So we basically give them 2 years to finish all the basic science, and they have to pass. And now this exam is actually sort of, you know, pass, fail. All right. So again, so on the graduate, right? So the USMLE number is very, very important. Don't try to create another one. It's sort of like it maps to your identity. Even if you change names, you're not going to get another number. So one person, one USMLE number. And the best part is free. It doesn't cost you anything, right? 0 T shillings, 0 US dollars. This is free, okay? And to us, it's sort of like a test of basically how serious is somebody in this whole process, right? So, you know, I get a lot of like requests to come, you know, chat with like family, friends, and this and that, and we like, you know, I'll spend like an hour of my time, explain about the process, encourage them, this and that. And if after I spend an hour with them and a month later they don't have a USMLE number, nothing's gonna happen, right? They were just wasting my time. And sometimes people just like to hear these stories. So we want you to have an action-oriented mindset, right? So it's kind of, I really don't know how to say it, but it's like, you have to decide whether you want this, right? Like you have to decide whether you want this. And it's not just that you want to come to the US, but do you want to be a better doctor? Do you want to do medicine? And if you don't want to do that, that's also a very good thing for us to know, because you should be doing something else. And there are a lot of things that you could be doing. And I don't say that in a way to say kwamba those things are bad or kwamba medicine is better. No. Unaweza ukafuga kuku, that's great. And be a great, you know, raised chicken. You want to like fuga ng'ombe, that's great. Be great at it. Unaweza ukawa na mabasi ya kwenda Arusha, that's great. Be great at it. You can be a tour guide. Be great at whatever it is that you want. But if you're here, right, and this place belongs to people who want to be better doctors. If you don't want to, then you should be doing something else. Now, so part of it is the same thing. So when we're saying, hey, you want to apply to the US, I want to do residency at US. Okay, here's a process, it's free. Right? It takes like whatever, you do it and basically the thing comes back in 5 days. And it takes you 3 months to do that one step, you're definitely not going to be able to do all the other steps. So it's a litmus test for us, and this is one of the reasons that we started to do these things and put them on YouTube, because it became repetitive. I'll talk to this person for an hour, talk to that person for an hour, talk to that person for an hour, and long and behold, you've talked to like 20 people, and only one of them has a USMLE number. So now we just say, you know what, give this information for free, thousands of people are watching it. When you have a number, then we'll start to engage with you. Now we know that you're serious, we can actually sort of, you know, engage you. So that's one quick litmus test. The next step, once you get the number, is you're going to have something called document verification, right? So this is where the medical school says, yes, we recognize that Dr. Yuma or Mr. Yuma is a student at MUHAS. That's going to require, all right? Mr. Yuma graduated from MUHAS. Right? What was the transcript? That is the document verification. You can't submit those documents. Those documents must be submitted by MUHAS. Meanwhile, the dean listed in that system has to be also the same dean. So sometimes our deans change, and now we have 3 deans at MUHAS. So I don't even know who the correct dean that will be dealing with this kind of like stuff. So those are sort of technicalities that are not really on your control. So the only point I can say here is bureaucracy takes time. It just takes time. It takes time in America, it takes time in Tanzania. Bureaucracy takes time. You can't force government offices to move any faster. That's universal, right? It's not a Tanzanian thing, it's just so basically that process can take 6 months. So do parallel processing. As you're studying for the USMLE, also have the document verification process going, And because your studying will take you anywhere from 9 to 12 months just to study for step one. Right? That's the sort of average. And usually I'll tell people, hey, this process can, from you basically deciding you're going to do step one, that is a 12 to 18 month process. From you passing step one, it's another 12 to 18 months before you actually join the residence. So all in all, we're talking 2-3 years minimum. That's how long it kind of like takes, especially if you're coming from outside the United States. But 2-3 years is like nothing. Honestly, 2-3 years is like nothing. That's the difference between MD1 and MD3. It's the difference between MD2 and MD4. It's nothing. It like goes like that, right? So time moves much, much faster than we can actually think. So as I said, give yourself at least 6 months to complete the document verification process, and this is why you want to start all of these things as soon as possible. Now, unfortunately, the document verification is not free, and it does cost money. But you'll spend $160 USD. It's valid for 7 years. Means once they certify you that you are indeed a medical student at MUHAS, you have 7 years to use that verification. You don't have to apply each year. So that's the beauty. So it's 160, but it covers 7 years. So for example, if you register at MD2, you still have 4 years post-graduation, right? So you have 3 years to finish medical school and another 4 years after you graduate, and that document verification is still valid, right? So I think it's worth it. And again, there are a couple of changes that are coming into the system, so we do probably recommend people do this sooner than later, because with the new changes, it may become a little bit more difficult. They're basically changing some of the verification rules in the next year or two, so just bear that in mind. And this is just to say, when you're in school, it's easier than when you're outside, right? So it's easier for you to walk to the dean's office when you're at MUHAS than when you're somebody posted in Shinyanga and Mbeya and you're trying to communicate via email to have somebody at MUHAS to submit your documents. So that's also why we try to talk a lot to medical students to take advantage of the fact that you are here. You can just walk to the dean's office and remind them, where once you leave here, you have also other responsibilities, and it's not so easy for you to do that. So that's all about basically saying USMLE number and document verification. Now we talk a little bit about the USMLE exam itself. This is all like basic science. So anatomy, physiology, biochem, pharmacology, pathology, microbiome, biostats, all the basic subjects you take before you go into the clinics. In the US, they've switched it in such that medical students start getting exposed to clinical care literally within 6 months of joining medical school. So because of this huge component of integration, right? So they want them to start seeing how their basic science actually applies within the clinic. Currently, it's pass-fail. That doesn't mean you want to just barely pass, right? You want to do extremely well, because when you do extremely well on step one, it helps you with the further examination, which is step 2 CK. So it's in the step 2 CK, which is the clinical exam, clinical knowledge exam. This is a scored exam. So what happened is people were using step 1 score to differentiate students. When they make a pass-fail, that loses advantage, right? So people used to score really high in step 1, and that looks awesome, right? So you score like a 240 or 250 or 260, that's awesome. But right now, you may score that, but it just shows pass, okay? So, people say, oh, it doesn't really matter. It actually does matter, because now you have only one number to start differentiating yourself. And don't let anybody tell you numbers don't matter, right? They've done this also with the undergraduate, right, with SAT, and kind of saying, oh, you don't need SAT numbers to kind of come into like US college and blah, blah, blah. But all of them are basically going back to like looking at those numbers, right? Because that is the only way to reasonably be fair. If somebody scores 1600 in SAT, they're definitely better than somebody who scores 900. I don't care, right? So these are statistical exams. It means they have better ability, period. And so that differentiation can be sort of an advantage. And I wanted to kind of mention to Dr. Mariam that basically these exams have to be studied for the exam, right? It's not really a test of intelligence per se, but there's also a thing about the exam that you have to study for the exam. So for the GRE, there's a way to study for the GRE. There's a way to study for the there's a way to basically study for it. beyond just like understanding the knowledge, because there's a way in which they ask you the questions, the way that which they ask you to integrate. And if you do enough practice, you're going to kind of figure, oh, when they ask this, this is the kind of thing that they kind of mean. So that's where, and again, mentorship can really help in that sort of like, regard. Utaki kujichimbia, right? All of you here are probably like top 10 in your schools from wherever you were, right? So many of you, to get here, you were sort of like loners. Like you go in and you just study by yourself for like hours and hours and hours. Wenzako anacheza nje, uko ndani unasoma. Okay? So this is different in the sense of like you want to be open and work in groups. So usually people work in like, teams. So they'll quiz each other like questions. So that way you're kind of getting feedback and so forth. It's very difficult to study all alone for these exams. It's kind of like benchmark yourself. So that's why also when we create these cohorts that we're trying to create, is we bring people who are at the similar stage so they can sort of encourage each other and learn from each other and so forth. And that makes everybody move much faster. So again, step 1 is basic sciences, but we know that anybody who does well on step 1 is basically gonna also do that much better. The point that we're trying to make here is you don't want to just read that step 1 book and then go take the step 1. We want to do this when we also have some clinical experience, at least for the people at ECFMG, right? Because it's very much basic applied sciences, right? You have to have the information integrated. So you can't just umekariri. You have to see how does this actually play out with the patients. So, and lastly, I should say is, I haven't looked at the specific undergraduate questions here, but these are sort of 3rd degree questions, right? By mine at 3rd degree, we don't ask you, what is this? Okay? So Dr. Ignas has a very good example of a 4-year-old African-American boy who comes in with swollen fingers. You have to understand, oh, that is a 4-year-old African-American. Why would they have swollen fingers? Could that be sickle cell? In that question, just that saying 4-year-old African-American boy with swollen fingers, now they're coming with a fever. What is the likely gram-negative organism? Right? So there's nothing that's going to be direct, like saying which, it doesn't say something like, in patients with sickle cell, what is the gram-negative organism? So in none of that question are you going to see sickle cell. They're not going to mention that. In none of that are they going to say salmonella. In none of that, they may say, what is the antibiotic of choice? And not mention anything. Gram-stained blood. So what is the most likely antibiotic of choice for this particular child? Right? So that's the sort of level in which, so these are 3rd degree. Uwezi kukariri. Forget it, right? There's none of that sort of so your thing is to kind of put information. For your African-American boy, maybe sickle cell. Swollen fingers, maybe dactylitis, right? Or they come with a swollen knee, maybe osteomyelitis, right? So we say, what would the x-ray show? Then you have to understand, what does the x-ray of osteomyelitis show? Right, so that's the level of questions that they're asking, especially in this step 2 CK. So if you just read the book, it's not enough for you to kind of have that kind of knowledge to kind of be able to put these together. So this is the piece that I'm saying, when you're able to integrate a lot of information, it will just make you a better doctor, period. Right? Everybody can get information labs. Everybody can get radiology. The job that we're paid is to integrate information. Put the lab values with the patient history, with the radiology findings to come up with a diagnosis. That is really the job, and that is very difficult to do unless you're kind of being forced in this sort of training and so forth. So again, in mechanics, these can only be done in Nairobi and Kampala at the moment. I don't know whether Kigali and Rwanda, they're able to do it. So if you're here in East Africa, you'll have to figure out how you're going to get to Nairobi and Kampala to do your exam. And I think the previous speaker mentioned that. Don't assume that it's available at MUHAS. These are sort of small technicalities. You have to arrive in Nairobi. So do not leave the night before, and then guess what? Air Tanzania decides they cancel your flight. Okay? Jipange, right? You have to anticipate these things, right? Because you are investing your time, and these things will happen. It doesn't mean because you, Air Tanzania, cancel your flight, USMLE is going to change their date. No. Right? You have to arrive on time. So you have to know how to get to the exam place, right? We used to tell people you have to do a walkthrough. mtihani ni Jumamosi. Ijumaa, go to that place. So when the day comes, you're not spending any emotional energy, figure mlango uko wapi, choo kiko wapi, hivi. Like, you figure that out. You gotta do all of that. So when you go, you're just focused on the examination alone. And these are things that we have to say, kwa sababu kwa Tanzania, we'll be like, nimechelewa kidogo. You know, it's not gonna work, right? Or kulikuwa na traffic, doesn't matter. Right? Nobody cares, right? Nobody cares. Remember, it's against the world. Sio tu wa Tanzania. They don't care. They don't care when in Tanzania, Rwanda, they don't care. America is like that. It's like one of the beauties of that country is that they don't care where you're from. They honestly don't care. You follow the rules, you follow the system, this is the rules. That's it. They don't really care, right? So why should they necessarily care? They don't even know what Tanzania is. Oh, is that Tasmania? They don't care, right? So you have to remind them, no, it's not. It's Tanzania. It's not Tanzania, right? So you have to explain, oh, you know East Africa? Okay, you know Kenya? You know, you heard like Serengeti? Okay. Now they, okay, sounds good. Have you heard like, you know, Hakuna Matata? All right, that's it. Simba? Okay, now they kind of, but you have to explain, but they don't care because, you know, it's America versus like the rest of the world. America itself is 50 countries, right? So even when you're in Georgia, there are 49 other states that are essentially independent countries. And they wouldn't care less because what happens in Alaska has no bearing to what's happening in Georgia, right? It's a local sort of environment. Come away, what's happening at Muhas is going to affect you more than what's happening at Hobart Kairuki. That's essentially how that sort of, you know, plays out. So, all right, so that's it. Jipange to kind of do this. And the last thing is that usually we also recommend that people do step 3. So usually 3 steps. So step 1, step 2, CK. Also, we allow people to basically do step 3 because that has advantages when you're applying from outside. That again, it gives a 3rd score, and peer, it shows that you are ready to become an independent licensed practitioner. So we don't want you entering residency and having one more exam that you could fail, and then basically you won't be able to practice and so forth. So usually when you're kind of coming as an outsider, meaning like a foreigner, IMG, the program will essentially screen you out if you don't do like step 3, because basically it's one more problem they have to deal. So usually they like people who are coming as IMG to have all 3 steps completed. Now that you know, like, you know what, you're going to be practice. So need to use USMLE specific material. Reading books is not enough. I kind of mentioned that. I mentioned the first aid. That's where the book should have basically been on this particular slide. So if you do all of that, right, so you passed step 1, you passed step 2. First, you had your USMLE number. You did your document verification. You did step 1. You did step 2 CK. You passed. You got to get a certificate. Bravo. You can now start the process. Okay, right? And the process is this. We want to get you to that national residency match program. This is the program that's going to dump you in one of the graduate medical education programs, right? So everything I've been talking about is to allow you to now put your name into this program to now say, you know, now I want to train in Atlanta, I want to train in Boston, I want to train in New York, I want to train in San Francisco, whatever. Now you can actually choose the school in which you're applying, okay? So we say basically as you are going through your training here at MUHAS is to have an understanding, when would you like to have your ECFMG certificate? How do you sort of like, you know, pace yourself in doing that? Again, you can do this many, many years after graduating. Many people have done it 10 years after graduating MUHAS. I think Dr. Ignace was 10 years after MUHAS. That's when he actually applied for his sort of like, you know, started his sort of like residency program. But I feel it's much better when we reach medical students at MD1. And so I really thank all the MD1s who are here because it's never too early to start, at least having the mindset that is possible and the fact that you can actually do a lot better. So again, coming back to the last slide that I showed very much in the beginning, why bother with all of this? Okay, hopefully I've convinced you that, you know, preparing for these exams enhances your medical knowledge. 2, it helps you to better integrate information. And then 3, it really helps you become a better doctor, right? That's the best thing you can do for your patients. They don't know what's bothering them, but you are trained and you can figure out what's wrong with them and hopefully give them something that's actually going to improve that. And I have to say that from a place of love, tuna changamoto kubwa sana, right? When it comes to funded knowledge and integration. a major, major problem. And that's one of the reasons mtaani everybody has UTI. Right? It's a major problem. And UTI, I say it as a joke, but even diabetes is a problem. Right? In this day and age, we have to be able to manage diabetes. Like even that alone, differentiating between type 1 and type 2 ni changamoto. Right? And this is like where like the basic science, we have to be able to kind of integrate that and not use mazoea. Right? And I do that all the time with my radiology like colleagues all the time. Don't just pull up a picture and assume that's the answer. Analyze the information. And it's very, very important. So I want to make sure we kind of get this message that your generation, Gen Z, is what's going to change medicine in Tanzania. We have to, your generation has to begin to kind of like say, no, what's the evidence for that? But inabidi uwe na shule. You can't challenge your chief when mwenyewe una shule. So, afu unajaribu kumchallenge chief. It's like, dude, it's like, what do you, one, you don't have experience, alafu pia you don't have fund of knowledge, right? At least have fund of knowledge, then you can challenge somebody with clinical experience. So, one, based on, they've seen hundreds of more patients. So, the fund of knowledge may not be updated, but you cannot beat clinical experience. Kama mtu ameona wagonjwa 100, wameona wagonjwa 100, wameona mmoja, right? But if you have enough fund of knowledge and you really know your data, you can support yourself. No, chief, based on this and this and this, I really honestly feel is that. Lakini inabidi pia ufanye kidiplomasia. So, the other point is, I believe as a country we're going into like pre-intern and post-intern exams, again to standardize all the 11 whatever medical students in Tanzania. So, if you do USMLE, you're definitely going to crush any Tanzanian examination. That's like going to be like a given, right? You're going to be way ahead of anything. And this is true also when you try to practice in the region. So if you could try to practice Namibia, I think Swaziland and other places who actually administer clinical exams, by you preparing USMLE, automatically you're going to be able to crush those examinations. So it just gives you a much higher level of expectation. And then lastly, it does position you for applying for US graduate medical education. So other points that we should say is here, you pay for the opportunity to do more training. In the United States, you get paid by our taxpayers to basically learn and go to school. So when you pass as part of the National Residency Match Program and you gain a spot in residency, you gain a salary, right? A pretty decent salary, right? So fikiria, $80 times whatever the exchange rate is, right? That's a lot of money, right? So basically, it will cover whatever cost. So sometimes people say, oh, well, you know, I have to spend like $160 for the document verification. I have to spend $1,000 for the exam, blah, blah, blah. They're going to be costs. Lakini ni mtaji, right? And we'll also say like, in the video, I think that people give like a lot of testimony. Even your family will help you if they feel, you know what, you're really applying yourself and you have potential. People will help you. And obviously, you'll be able to pay it back even if it came back as a loan. But that's a major sort of incentive. And that's why a lot of people, even though they may be senior physicians where they practice, still come to the United States because it's so much better from a monetary perspective. Na pia inawasaidia kama wanataka kusomesha watoto and all of that, it's much easier because of that sort of like remuneration. The last piece is if you want to do highly specialized training, that's also going to be available to you. So you can study internal medicine, you can apply cardiology, then you can apply electrophysiology. And then suddenly you're only dealing with heart rhythms. That's it. You're just dealing with like doing like pacemaker. That's the only thing you do, right? For example, I only do neuroradiology, right? I don't do mammo, I don't do like body, I only read images of the brain and spine. That's it, right? So it allows you to kind of specialize and then kuwa mbobezi within sort of your field. So that's another like point, if that's something that of interest to you. And then also, when you have skills, now you have something to offer, right? So if you have those skills, you can come home and actually you can contribute to kind of like helping improve training programs here. You can decide to practice here in Fungwa Clinic. You can do all of that now that you've gained the skills. So again, you can't leverage skills you don't have, right? So you have to first invest in yourself, then you have something to offer and kind of like train other people. So I think that's pretty much getting most of the things. I did say that there are strategies that yielded results. So next steps. When you have your USMLE number, then we're going to have you invite you into one of the cohorts for additional mentorship. If you don't have a USMLE number, then unaweza tukaendelea kuangalia YouTube. I just keep watching it again, watch it again, watch it again. Wakati unajipanga, right? Just watch it again. So I've sometimes people will stop and say, hey, Dr. Minja, can I have your number? Like, no. So I said, no, I'm not sure. Go to this video, right? If you follow the instructions, we will meet at the end, right? But we're not gonna engage one-on-one. So I cannot do that, right? Apple alone, you guys are like more than 100 people, right? If I have 100 people sending me messages, but naomba nikupigie simu, like that's gonna be my whole life just kind of like answering. It's not effective. Neither is it like, time effective. So sisemi kwa ubaya, but we really want to kind of move people who are in the process. So really, at the end of this is I hope we are beginning to change your mindset, kwamba usikae just to expect stuff to come to you. You also need to kind of go for it. And when you start moving, then we can kind of meet you inside the process. So, so as you kind of do that, we will move you step by step, and that's why the USMLE has 101 kwa watu ambao ndo kwanza wanasikia what is USMLE, 201 kwa watu ambao wamepass step 1, 301 kwa watu actually applying for residence, right? So you cannot get into like 201 until you actually have passed step 1. And then when you pass step 1 and you pass CK, now we know, oh, you're applying next year, we put you in like the group 301, so now we know, because each one of those groups is going to has different needs in terms of like they need exposure, they need like, to do research, labda on the side, they need to, let's say, do clinical experience, so then we can sort of move you. But we can't move you, talk about clinical experience after USMLE number una, like we can't really do that. So that's the whole thing about the code for USMLE numbers for session 2 and 3. So that's all I have, and we can do a Q&A for a few minutes. Asanteni sana.
Thank you, Dr. Minja. Thank you
Asante.
so much for the
Asante.
insight. And I think we're gonna, which modality is best? Do we collect questions?
Sure, whichever. I mean, I would favor anybody in the room, if you have a question, just ask it.
Yeah. So guys, if you have questions.
Doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't. Now, and then if there are people online, if they have questions, you can collect those here.
Thank you, Doctor, for the nice presentation. I just wanted to ask the process ya umeongelea kuhusu kuwa resident.
Yeah.
Is the process the same as if you want to do subspecialization?
Oh, okay. So that's a great question. Meaning like fellowship.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
So fellowship usually comes after residency.
yes.
Yeah. So they are different. Meaning kwamba, in order for you to qualify for fellowship training, usually you need residency training. Right? So it's the equivalent of like MEd to MSc at MUHAS. That's basically what you'll be talking about. Right?
So like if I want to do MSc there, I have to do residency again there, or
Correct.
I can.
Correct. Most of the time, that is the case if you want to practice in the United States. Now, sometimes people will have loopholes whereby they come and train as fellows. Like, you will still have to have completed. For example, if you're trying to come and study neuroradiology fellowship, right? We would want you to have qualified MEd in Tanzania first. And then you can do as a fellow. Lakini you won't be able to practice in the States. And often the fellowship program will have these requirements. They'll say, show us your step 1 score. Show us your step 2 score. Show us your ECFMG certificate. So still, it's gonna kick you back down into this. Because sababu, you have to understand, when you're in the United States, you're getting a provisional license. So all of this USMLE is to give you a provisional license. Yani, that's the issue. So you cannot get a provisional license unless you pass the licensing exams. So it's not, yani, sooner or later, you're gonna basically end up in this sort of like, on a scenario.
Okay, so that applies to the same as if you want to work there, Cindy?
Yeah, absolutely. If you want to work there, it's no question. No question. So there may be few opportunities where people do short-term observerships. You may have like 6 months or so to come and do an observership in a particular specialty and all of that. But those are specifically understood that you're not trying to work in the United States. Remember, the USMLE is trying to create a United States workforce. That's what they care about. But if you're just coming, you want to do a 3-month observership, Papa, that's well and good. So long as you don't ask a hospital to hire you, somebody to pay you, and all, that's fine. So you can. So I think that's also maybe usually some of the branch point is you can certainly come to the United States just for the education experience. But if you're trying to work in the United States system, then these are going to be the steps that you have to do. So maybe that's another point of sort of clarification that we should have.
Okay, another question. What is the cost of the exams?
So this information is available online. I would say, roughly speaking, they're around $1,000 each.
And for if you are a specialist and you want to do some specialization, are the exams, the number of exams the same as you want to do residency or?
No. So basically, when you try to do fellowship, often you don't have, it's different sort of like, levels. And again, this comes down to the fact of whether you want to work there, right? So for example, in radiology, you do radiology board certification. When you finish radiology residency, you have to do radiology boards. So if you want to practice as a radiologist, then automatically that will come as a thing. Like if you say, hey, I just want to learn neuroradiology for 6 months and then go back to Tanzania, people are like, yeah, you're welcome to come. So that's really where it kind of, the system becomes more strict if you want to work in the system. But if you just want to come in the system to see what people do, the system can be very flexible, and often it just depends on who your host is, right? Me as your host will decide what your experience is. Lakini, when you're coming to as a worker, then the program has rules. The ACJME says, you must give this person this and this and that. Remember, the government, the taxpayers are paying for your education, right? Like, it's not free. Medicare is paying for you to be a trainee and also take care of Medicare patients. So that's how that thing is.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Karim.
Okay, I also had a question. So after getting the exam process done, then you're matched. Do you immediately start your residency, or is there another process that you have to?
No, so basically when you do the match, so the match program, again, that's a little bit more advanced, so that will be probably talked to about in 201 or 301. But roughly speaking, when you qualify for the National Residency Match Program, you're going to submit an application to multiple residency, right? So let's say 20 residency. The ones that are interested in you will offer you an interview. So you might apply to 20, 5 will say, okay, we want to invite you for an interview. If they really like you, they will put you in their shortlist. So what happens is the program has a short list of candidates, the candidates have a short list of programs. They put it in a computer. Sometime in March, they press go, then the computer program just basically matches and says, this is the program you really liked, and this is the program that really liked you. Boom, you become a match. Why do we say it's a match? The assumption is you can get great training in many, many different programs. So they match for basically, are you a fit? Meaning, are you likely to come to our program? Do we like people like you? Are you from our region? Those kind of things, which are a little bit more soft, and it would be the difference. Kwa nini mtu afanye kazi Buganda instead of Mbeya? If you had a choice. Kwa nini, like those kind of like soft things. Like, so you rank. So say even in Tanzania, you could say, well, I want to rank the referral hospitals in Tanzania in this particular category. And then those hospitals in Tanzania also say, we want candidate A, B, C. Boom. And then they have a computer that basically says, optimizes Yokomba. You really like to go to Mbeya, and Mbeya really likes you. Then you match. So that's how, and usually you're matching in a cycle, right? So that's why the whole 18 is not a roll any so muda wowote, right? So residency in the US starts July 1st, every year. Every year. So the new class starts July 1st, the last class graduates June 30th. That's basically how it works. So it means sometime in September, October, the application season opens. Then sometime in December, January, they're doing interviews. Sometimes in March, you get accepted, like the match happens. And then when you match, the following July 1st, you start, right? So all of these steps, you have to work it back. And that's why usually I say, if you're really trying to apply, you have to work it sort of backwards. If I want to match, if I want to start residency in July 2025, I must have my application submitted by August 2024, like now. Okay? Which means you must have completed your step 1, step 2, step 3 by now. Which means, so you have to, yeah. So that's how it basically, that's why I said when people decide to apply, it's usually about 3 years before they actually start their residency, right? So if you say you want to start residency in July 2025, subtract 3 years, you should have started in 2022. So it means if you want to start now, just add +3. That's the likely date in which you would be able to sort of be eligible. Yani, now where's the force? You can be like, well, you know what, no. The programs don't really like, it's like, Nisame doesn't really matter. Like, so again, these things are like so, I can't, you have to understand the system is massive, right? There are thousands of people going through this process. Sio wewe too, like literally thousands, something like 30, 40,000 students or whatever are trying to like match into this spot. So it's not a small like program. It's like multiple, again, remember, America's 50 countries. So within Georgia, there are going to be like 10, 20 programs just within like one state. So it's that sort of thing. So they have to kind of figure how they're matching and so forth. Asante. Yeah, Karim.
First, thank you for the presentation.
Yeah.
Again, thank you for the videos. I've watched a couple times.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask, after you do your step 1, the 3 steps,
Yeah.
is there a difference between what's the big difference between the clinical and step 3?
Good. So basically, step 3 is usually testing like post-intern. It's like a post-intern exam, roughly speaking. So, and usually it's probably the easier of the exams. So again, remember these exams are not created for IMGs. They're created for like US graduates. So basically, step 1 is, are you ready to go into the clinic? Step 2, are you ready to graduate from medical school? Step 3, did you learn anything during your internship? That's roughly how the exams are sort of geared. So basically, you know, so if you think about it, step 1, basic science. Step 2, end of clinical medicine. Step 3, end of internship.
Okay. So after someone gets into the MEd program, it's basically they're getting a job, yes?
Correct.
During the resident program, are there additional steps or exams someone is supposed to be taking through that?
Yes, many of them, again, many programs will be asking for board certification.
At the end?
Yeah.
Okay.
At the end or during, but basically every specialty is different, but basically, again, these are ways in which they make sure you keep current, right? So that's the board exam. And usually, many of them will be like every 10 years you have to do an exam, but now they've sort of changed that every year you have to do certain number of MCQs or questions. It's continuous, basically, continuous. So every year you have to certify that I've done 50 questions in neuroradiology. And every year those questions change. So that's how they keep you going. So and that's what most of us choose. It's easy. It's like, it takes you 2 seconds, you answer it, because it's not book knowledge. It's like, if you're doing this work, it's going to be easy for you. This is what you already see day to day. But if you don't see it day to day, it's going to be very difficult for you. So that's how they keep people going. And they're going away from that because, again, knowledge is changing much faster. They used to do it every 10 years. But the knowledge that between, like, basically that was 10 years ago. Remember, 10 years ago, there wasn't COVID. That's basically how rapidly stuff changes, right? And, 2030, there's going to be something completely different. And so we have to kind of keep up.
I also wanted to know, you said that you have to, the big short list of the university you chose, and then the short list from the universities. What happens if the university
Okay? Meaning, if you get matched to go to Kilimanjaro, you have to go. Okay? So the idea is, if you say, I don't want to work in Kilimanjaro, you do not put him on your rank list. It's called a rank list, right? So you're going to have you have choices. But every program that you rank, you're saying that if I get into this program, I must go. And literally, it's a contract. If you break the contract, there's actually huge penalty because basically you force that program to now go into what's called a scramble. They have to like fill the thing last minute. And it just basically means no other program will essentially take you, right? So again, it's a sort of like trust thing. Yeah, that's basically how it works. Because basically, if we say, oh, they'll see on the system that you basically reneged. And basically, that's like a very bad thing. It reminds me one more other thing that every time I'm mentoring my Tanzania, I always have to remind them that one of our faults ni udanganyifu mdogo mdogo, right? Like small lies, okay? Na dhambi kubwa kuliko yote Marekani ni kuongopa. So mathalan, nakuja, minwa unaondoka, okay? These are like small things that we do, we don't even like think about it. Nipo, haupo, right? Niko Magomeni, uko Muhimbili, right? It's stuff like that that we really, really have to guard against because everything in America is verifiable. Everything is verifiable, okay? And usually what we assume ni kwamba umesema ukweli until I find out umeongopa, okay? And when that happens, most of you come on, you're not going to recover, basically. Basically, it's just not worth that time, right? It's basically, I cannot trust you. And that really is very, very difficult. And I always, when I'm mentoring Tanzanians, I have to like remind them, because sometimes we don't even know that we're doing it. And it's so ingrained. Kwani kuna nini? So what's the issue? Evil. We're casual. We're casual. But with the American system, you cannot do that. And the other example I like to use, Nick, hata Mheshimiwa Tiger Woods alivyofumaniwa, what the first thing he did? He acknowledged. Yeah, that was me. I did that somewhere, right? So, ukwepo nani? Uko wavuvi last night? Bana sio mimi nilikuwa nasoma. Okay? So automatically you're disqualified. Evil. Like it's like small things like that, right? Because basically it shows me if I cannot trust you with small things, I can't trust you with big things. It's very simple, right? But it's something that people find strange about America. Kwa sababu sawa, kuna vitu vingi sana vinawakwaza watu. But that, universally people will tell you, basically speaking the truth is actually the number one thing that people will have a very tough time for. And ukijikuta umeongopa, please recover very quickly and just come on and say, you know what? Just admit it. Just admit it. Tafuta njia, just admit it and admit it. Just own it. Say, you know what? I'm sorry, I did that. Just admit it quickly. Then unaizima. Right? Then people are, you know what? At least, and you should do it before they find out. If they find out before you, I'm sorry, man. Hapo imekula kwako. All right, I'm doing too much editorializing. Naomba tufanye maswali mawili matatu alafu tumalize. Okay, karibu. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Minja. So we have got two questions from our online attendee.
Yeah.
The first question is from Clis Diali, who asked that I have a question for midwife opportunity in US. Is it all procedure in USMLE applied to midwife too? And how is general view of the midwife there? The second question comes from Gracie, who asks, hello, thank you, Dr. Minja, for eye-opening presentation. So is this USMLE for medical specialty even applying for other degree, for example, dental surgeon in bracket DDS? Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, those are great questions. So moja on the midwifery, that is a separate pathway. I don't believe there will be residency training for that. So usually the residency training will be for obs-gyn. So I think midwives will be considered more on the allied health, and it will be the pathway for like physician assistant, I'm a nurse practitioner. They will have their own pathway and their own sort of certification rules. So for somebody looking into that, I would highly encourage them to look at those specific. And again, all of this information is available online. I'm sure there's going to be an American Society for Midwives. Now, within that, they'll have like a structure that you can follow, but it will be very different for the USMLE, and that's one. And then as for the dental, so dental is even like a completely different system in the United States, and it's way more restricted and way more competitive. I think they do step one, but I don't believe they do step 2 and 3, just like the medical side. And because usually what happens in medical school, MD and dental students are together for the basic science. By that basic science, we branch out. They're doing something completely different, and they don't do internship. They don't really go that pathway. So I think we're with them through step 1, and then step 2 CK, and step 3 we're separate. Yeah.
Sorry. Thank you very much for the presentation. Given that the whole process may take a long while, say if someone has already graduated from medical school and they're probably working somewhere, what are the things that you think this person could do during the process other than studying that could probably increase their probability to be matched? Like, would you recommend people to get involved into research or something like that? And the other thing is, if this person gets an opportunity, say, to go for masters during this period of waiting, and probably wouldn't cost them much, or they're getting a sponsorship for it here in Tanzania, would you suggest that they take the opportunity, or do you think it will be more of like a waste of time?
So nothing is going to be a waste of time. So it just depends on what your goals are. So in terms of making yourself competitive, yes, doing research helps, but it's not mandatory. The thing that helps with research, it shows commitment, right? Even to get a publication requires a certain level of commitment. And that's what it shows. We don't care what you publish about. Like in the fact that you were able to get a publication shows kwamba you were able to follow through from beginning to end. And that is a good thing for you. So I would say, yes, so research involvement would be good. If you get a master's opportunity in between that's related, then I would certainly do it. So, mathalan, there are many people who try to do MPH while they're studying for their steps. The only caveat I have is if the MPH costs a lot of money, then I don't think it's a good investment, right? So that's the sort of caveat. If you get it sponsored and it's free, then yeah, absolutely do it. It helps, right? It helps to have public health knowledge during your MD. Like I see some people who feel that that investment is worthwhile, and but sometimes it can be quite expensive. But again, kila mtu has different mazingira, and if you're lucky that you have somebody who can finance that and it's not too bad, then it's good, because then it gives you exposure to the US system. When you go to interview, you're going to be different because you already have had a year within the US system. So after when you interview, you're going to be different. And kuna vitu tayari utakuwa umejifunza that somebody who's coming straight from Tanzania will not necessarily have learned. So I think you want to look at it from an opportunity to expand your mind and not so much waste of time. Yeah, there's never a waste of time because all experiences can be leveraged. Kwa hiyo, yeah, so. Mi nadhani nimemaliza bado. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Minja, for sharing your enriching experiences with us. I wanted to know, it's actually beyond medical practice, but it's connected to it. So I wanted to know the public health system in the US. How do they function? If you want to practice there as a public health specialist, how are the process and everything?
Oh, as in like MPH? MPH. So I think that route would kind of go more like around CDC, and then you may work also with the departments of public health within the state and within the local government. Kwa maana ya, for example, during COVID, each state managed its own COVID response, right? And ndio maana you had a lot of like confusion, and you had like Fauci trying to like basically make that coordinated. So America can be messy like that. So usually, if you're really kind of going public health, then basically you have two options. Either you work at the federal level, which is CDC, or you work at the state level, which is going to be Department of Public Health. And that will like look at the local state issues. So Georgia will have very different issues compared to Massachusetts, compared to Alaska, compared to California, and so forth. So those are sort of the arena. And then the third arena is going to be in the public nonprofit sector, sort of nonprofit sector, like NGOs, right? So you may have NGOs that have a huge health bent, so they're looking for people with sort of MPH opportunities. US nonprofits that are involved in healthcare outside the US. So that's another way to kind of like, leverage where they want somebody with that healthcare experience. And then lastly, pia kuna engo ya policy, even though that is very much now evolving. Kwa kiasi kikubwa MPH were contributing to like healthcare policy, like that is becoming its own sort of like people do like masters in public MPP instead of MPH, and so that it just depends. I think the best way to kind of decide that is how do you want to serve and at what level? Do you want to serve at the state level? Do you want to serve at the federal level? Do you want to serve international? Do you want to serve within the nonprofit sector? And then you can kind of like leverage that way.
Thank you.
Asante.
Thank you for your time.
Nashukuru.
We have a small gift as Mohas,
Wow.
which will be presented by the DVC academics. Dr. Balanja. So when you can come forward.
Just a round of applause. I wanted to say a few things. I'm not in the timetable, but I thought I should take liberty to say Frank exemplifies what it is to move from Tanzania to a place like the US and then come back. Because when you go out, it should really justify your moving out of the country. And I think there are at least two important things. One is to go study very hard, make sure you get to the very best of what you can be. And a place like the US provide that opportunity, and he has exemplified that. The second is not forgetting home, okay? So coming back in one way or another. So again, he has exemplified that by coming back to Tanzania, networking with radiology at the hospital and at MUHAS, making sure cutting-edge technologies and services are established. And as you know, now we have intervention radiology, we have neuroradiology, things that we could only dream of. So, but now they are here in country. So I think he has paid all his dues. He is continuing to pay his dues for being away and again, coming back to share those experiences with you guys so that you can follow behind his lead in terms of looking for opportunities and making the most of those opportunities for our country, for ultimately the whole planet. You know, the US is going to elections. The Democratic nominee is Kamala. I think she came here, if you remember. She came here and met with Mama Samia at some point. So she holds Tanzania near India. And we have a track record of US presidents coming here. So in the eyes of the US, Tanzania is looked up really, really high. And I think it's time for you guys to take advantage of those, especially when you're not forgetting them. So again, Frank, asante sana for everything that you have done, you continue to do. We wish you well, we wish you health, so that you continue delivering and guiding the very eager young population. Don't forget Tanzania, we still need you. Asante sana. So now I think I can hand over the... This award to Dr. Frank Minja in recognition of your unwavering support to MUAS and your commitment to advancing radiology training and services in Tanzania.
One, I really appreciate this opportunity. It's a little bit a lot, and I really appreciate it. Pia nataka tu watu wajue kwamba sisi tumekulea maneno haya. Watoto wadogo we used to play table tennis at the annex. Okay? nimesoma Azania, right? Nimesoma pia Muhimbili Campus. Kwa haya mazingira, yani ni nyumbani in such a way ambayo ni it's like deep, yani kwamba hapa tumekatiza ni mafensa hapa, wengine hapa mjui sasa hivi tunajenga ukuta whatever, right? Nyuma hapa Azania tukatiza, kuja kucheza table tennis hapa kwenye annex, right? Tumeisha kupanga kibasila hapo project hiyo. Bali nimesoma Muhimbili primary. So haya maeneo they are very familiar and I was born at Muhimbili. Yaani hapa ni nyumbani in such a way like that. Lakini so I just say that ili watu wajue na kwamba wewe pia you can just do it. Yaani usije ukajifikia hapa there's something like crazy ambacho huwezi kufanya. Right? So a lot of the stuff that we're doing, we want to make sure kwamba ujisikie hivyo. And I just really want to say that. And I say that enough ili watu wajisikie hivyo na pia kwa Kiswahili ili watu pia wasikie bwana, huyu jamaa vipi? Ushakuwa mzungu na nini, right? So, yani ujisikia kama ni hivyo, yani sisi watu nyumbani. And then the last point is, wengi sometimes they say, bwana anafanya hivi, labda it's like Mother Teresa, like Karatumia. No, it's an existential issue. So, existential issue for you. So, I'm a neuroradiologist. What I do is read brain images day and night, right? So that's what I do. Literally, say, if I had a right and one occlusion, so it's in my right hemisphere, so I will be able to read that CTA and tell you exactly what's going on. But I won't be able to fix the outcome. So I know that for a fact. So Pili, I've lived here with my family, I'm talking about a seizure, to break up with you. So these are not any, it's not charity. Na wao usifanye hivi vitu kama, usifanye kuhurumia, unafanya kama kijiwe. Medicine is not really like that. The issue is kwamba wote hapa ni wagonjwa moja. So that's the game. The maana kasema pale, kama wewe you're not trying to become a better doctor, labda hapa sio, iseme. And it's okay. That's actually better that you know that, kuliko baadaye unakuja kuumiza mtu. Right? Or una discourage yourself. But if you're here and you're trying to become a better doctor, then we can help you. We can help you become a better doctor. Na that's itakusaidia wote pamoja na mimi, kwa siku moja ukisoma CT yangu usisahau na nisome vizuri. Asante.
And wote tumekuwa trained and we're here. So go train, come back home, make some changes. You wish to baki huko, baki, as long as you make a difference. You can make a difference wherever you are, whether you're in Tanzania or you're in the States. As you can see, Dr. Minja is Kule, but he's making a difference here in Tanzania. Having said that, I'd like to thank you all for making time and coming. If you have any further questions, you can email us. Indio. Or kama kuna any question now before we close. Any questions from the floor? Yes, there's one question there and another one here. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I wanted to ask about, in the course of doing those USMLE examinations, once for the bad luck it happened, you fail one of the examinations. There is a chance to retake the examinations or not. And if you retake the examinations, you pay the same $1,000 or there's a reduction. Thank you.
Yes and yes. Each time you fail, you'll have to basically register again. And I will tell you that many people have taken it multiple times. I believe I know some folks who've trained in Russia who've taken it more than 10 times. right? So people just take it, right? And the reason is, if you immigrate, let's say from the Eastern Europe, if you don't do that, then you end up becoming a taxi driver instead of like a medical physician. So people keep taking it. Usually it's an issue of language. Sorry, usually it's an issue of language. That's why people fail it. It's just basically they don't know enough. And that's why peer, you need English proficiency. So it's not they don't know medicine, they don't know enough English. That's usually the problem for folks who've already qualified elsewhere and they find themselves like failing over and over again. It's just because they don't know, they're not able to understand the questions.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Minj. My question is it what are the chances going for USMLE after your med school and getting the chance to practice medicine in US, or getting your master's degree here and then going to US? What are the chances of getting an opportunity? Is it better you start with your residency or after the residency? Or maybe because some people get opportunities to start residency and they are like, where should we start? Like, what are the chances?
It's a good question. I think it really depends on where do you want to practice. I think that's how you want to sort of phrase that. Meaning, if you feel that eventually you want to practice in Tanzania, I think probably doing an MMed here would be a better route, and then you go for additional training abroad where you don't have to necessarily do all the extra stuff. Lakini, if you are set kwamba you want to one day work in the United States, then I think the sooner you get there, the better off you are. Kwa sababu if you do your MMed, what will happen is you'll have to redo the residency, right? Remember, you'll have to just repeat it, right? So they won't take the MUHAS MMed and allow you to practice just based on that. So you'll have to do USMLE, you'll have to do the residency, so you're adding more time. So I think the sooner you can decide, and that's what I was saying, like deciding where you want to work will allow you to kind of make those decisions.
Naomba kuongezea, so just, and you don't have to wait till you finish medical school, right?
Correct.
Yes, so if there are some things that you can do while you're still in training, better do them. And for USMLE, especially for step 1, because step 1 is basic, so ukiwa MD1, 2, 3, that's when you know it. By the time unamaliza residency au MMed hapa, kusoma inakuwa ni kazi, kwa sababu vitu vingi unakuwa umeshasahau. And thus, itakuwa longer route. You'll be good in clinicals, but it will take you longer to go practice in the US. So that also depends. There are some that have taken that route, wamefanya hapa MMed and then wameenda, but it was not their decision. Ni kwamba tu walijikuta hapo kule and they have to do it. But if they would have done it better again, na wanataka kukaa kule, wangefanya mapema zaidi and not wait until they finish MMed here. Especially if you want to practice and kuishi huko. Masters nyingine ukiachana na MMed, from I know folks that they did wamefanya masters ya public health before going to medical school ili iwasaidie kupata admission into good schools. So some people do that. Kwa sababu it's very competitive. So maybe ukisema mimi I have a master's degree, I have an MPH from Harvard or another big institution, unapata recommendation letter nzuri for you to go to residency. Inakupunguzia ile competition ya kuwa, because you have to be different and so many people applying. For those are other means ambazo wengine wamefanya in order to get into to get selected mapema zaidi. So the last question.
My question was, when you presented, you mentioned some platform for mentorship at different levels for those who is in the registration number or those who have done step 1. How does someone get access to this?
I think I had it on the slide. Labda nilipita chap here, right? So I know my instruction apia iko kwenye hiyo YouTube video. So usually when people want to get my phone number, I refer them to the USMLE 101. Na wakisikiliza yote, they'll end up here. So when you end up here, that's when we sort of gonna start to engage. Now again, you will appreciate kwamba wote mna maswali hayo, and it's really not fair kwamba I answer the same questions 100 times. So that's it. We just have to kind of do that. So if you do that, then basically automatically we'll put you in that cohort, and as you progress, you move to the next cohort, and so forth. And also when you struggle, when you're in that cohort, we'll begin to know, hey, wait, why do you keep failing? we can do more targeted mentorship in terms of that. So that's basically the route. So.
All right. Asanteni sana, tumemaliza maswali. So this is the end of our session. We will send you an email na the resources from the US Embassy and from Dr. Frank. Yes, so just have one more thing, a group photo outside for those who wish, and then we can go. Asante.